I'm Phil Rickaby, and I've been a writer and performer for almost 30 years. But I've realized that I don't really know as much as I should about the theatre scene outside of my particular Toronto bubble. Now, I'm on a quest to learn as much as I can about the theatre scene across Canada. So join me as I talk with mainstream theatre creators you may have heard of and indie artists you really should know, as we find out just what it takes to be stage-worthy. If you value the work that I do on Stageworthy, please consider leaving a donation either as a one-time thing or on a recurring monthly basis. Stageworthy is created entirely by me, and I give it to you free of charge with no advertising or other sponsored messages. Your continuing support helps me to cover the cost of producing and distributing the show. Just 4 people donating $5 a month would help me cover the cost of podcast hosting alone. Help me continue to bring you this podcast. You can find a link to donate in the show notes, which you can find in your podcast app or at the website at stageworthy.ca. Now, on to the show. Tara Travis is an actor, voice actor, and puppeteer known for her physical theater work. Christine Lesiak is a theater artist, teacher, and director. They joined me to talk about The Spinsters, in which they play Cinderella's stepsisters, which you can see November 16th to 18th at the Shadbolt Centre in Burnaby, BC, and from January 16th to 27th at Edmonton's Westbury Theatre. In this conversation, we talk about the origin of the play, how the two of them first came together as artists, and much more. One quick note, in various points in the conversation, there's some distortion in Christine's microphone. I've done my best to clean it up, but you may still hear it. Here's our conversation. Christine, Tara, thank you for joining me. Just to jump in, which one of you would like to tell me about The Spinsters?
The Spinsters is a dark comedy. Tara and I play Cinderella's ugly stepsisters, and you meet us in their middle age, and they are hosting a ball. So this time, it's their rules.
So where did this come from? Where did the idea for this come from?
Christine and I are both tall ladies who specialize in comedy. Her more in clown, me more in like multiple character, shape-shifting theater, but with very complementary skill sets. Both very much love each other, chosen sisters, separated by provinces. We've always wanted to work together on something, but how? There was one time I was visiting the Edmonton Fringe in 2017, and Christine and I were walking along, just tall and, gorgeous as we are. And let's speak with confidence, shall we? Christine's partner, Ian, was walking behind us, and he's a mechanical engineer who has this wild, inventive mind, and he loves building stuff for theater. And he saw us walking together and said, I love this image. I want to see this on stage. I want to see the two of you gliding around in epic dresses. Also, I could build them for you. And we said, yes, that sounds excellent. We love that. We are deeply on board with that. But what's the show?
What's the story? I mean, a beautiful image is one thing, but at the end of the day, if we're going to create a piece of theater, we need to know what the story is. So fast forward 3 years, fall of 2020, that year, we were in a cabin together as couples, Tara and her husband, and Ian and I, very safely, COVID safe, and doing a whole bunch of nature walks. And it came to us after some conversations about our teenagehood and our awkwardness, and we'll say more about that in a second. But it came to us, we are the ugly stepsisters. That's who we identified more with than with Cinderella. And that raised a whole bunch of interesting questions about, well, who are they? What would they be in as middle-aged ladies?
Yeah. What happened to them? You know?
Yeah.
What was their real deal?
I mean, very few people are actually, there are very few like actual evil people. Everybody has a backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And they've gotten the ugly stepsisters have gotten a bad rap.
Yeah. They've been painted through one specific lens, right?
Yeah.
And we want to give them a little more opportunity, a little more stage time, if you will.
Now, the you mentioned the dresses and the gliding and that sort of thing. I have seen video of the two of you walking in these dresses. They do glide. They are epic. But they're also very striking because do they have like wheels on them just to keep do they have wheels? Is that what's happening there? Because it's pretty spectacular.
That's an excellent question.
There is some mechanical magic happening underneath there. Yeah. Yeah.
Proprietary mechanical magic.
Oh, of course.
Blink, blink, smile, smile.
But it does create an otherworldly effect in a movement repertoire, unlike anything else that I've ever seen, which makes it very interesting. They are very striking. And also the video you've seen to date, those were prototypes.
Right.
Those are not finished gowns. And we've been getting pictures of the gowns as they're getting closer and closer to being finished. And each one of them is like a mobile set in and of itself. They are phenomenal.
Wow.
As you were saying that, Christine, I had full body goosebumps just run over me. Like, they are magnificent. I'm not sick of looking at them yet.
So at some point, you go from this idea that Ian had of the gliding dresses to like each of the dresses being like a full set of its own. What is the road to those costumes as they are? How did the costumes develop with the characters?
Well, one of the first people that we brought onto the team creatively, aside from the three of us, Christine and Ian and I, was my dear friend Adam Dixon, who we met in theater school, and he went into sort of the high fashion world. And so he's been working in the fashion industry, but he very kindly has been designing theater pieces for me over the years. And it's very much his passion. And so we brought him into the conversation. He was immediately electrified by the challenge. And so we just had all these discussions about what we wanted them to do and how they were going to operate. And we've just been these significant jam sessions. We've got all of these different drawings throughout the years, all our different pitches. It's so cool to see the evolution of the idea. And oh golly, has it evolved. There are 9 sewers on his team right now.
Oh,
like, yeah.
There's a custom dye person.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's nuts.
It's nuts.
Now, we've talked about the dresses and we talked about the initial idea. How did the story develop over time? You start with the idea about the stepsisters, Cinderella's ugly stepsisters, and you have to turn that into a story. So what was the writing process like on creating a show like this?
That's been really challenging for us because we were both physical creators. We're used to getting into a studio and writing on our feet. And we are in different provinces. Tara's in Vancouver. I am in Edmonton and Alberta. And so we have traveled to be in studio together. And I would say the first thing we did was test out a prototype of these magical dresses in order to see whether they would actually even work. So Ian built us those, and we got in a studio together in 2021, I think it was, summer of 2021, and we saw what kind of images could we make, very much digging into a devised image-based theater process. And once we saw the images we could make, and we discovered some really fun shadow play, the story kind of evolved from there. So it's been a very interesting process where the design and the imagery and the story have been cross-pollinating each other the entire journey, which has been really fun for us from a design perspective. And frankly, the way I love to work, where it's an iterative process, where everything evolves with each other as we go. But I would say Tara and I, we had some challenges actually writing the text, would you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, because we are such iterative, character-based, on our feet in the room creators, staring at each other over Zoom and smashing keys was just, it was kind of agony at times. And we just found that there was so much benefit in getting in the same room together and just getting into character, or, getting into the mask as much as we could, and just letting the characters tell us what it needed to be. That's when we had our most fruitful creation times. But, we also smashed a lot of keys and figured out a lot of logic things that way too. It was just, we definitely prefer being together.
Which came first, the smashing of the keys or the in the room? Do you work in the room together and then refine with the keys, or do you smash things out on the keyboard and then take those into the room and fix them?
It definitely started pre-story to a degree. We had sort of a very general idea of where we wanted to start and end with the storyline, but ultimately it was, but I feel like it was like physical experimentation, then laying things down back and forth with some help along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that we had a really challenging time nailing our given circumstances, because it's a bit of a fragile world they're playing in, and we play with different realities, I would suggest, with this world that they are living in. And that was the hardest thing. And then I would also say we had to get brave about being willing to write for each other's characters, because I think we were both very precious and cautious at first. But I don't want to put any words in Tara's character's mouth, and I think Tara felt the same way. But once we freed ourselves to say, I'm just going to throw some stuff on a page and you're going to tweak it. And then I would say our juices really got cooking, and we had a lot more fun, I think, individually and together as writers.
Mm-hmm. Once we stopped being so careful and polite.
Stop being so Canadian.
Yeah, so Canadian.
Is there a way that you managed to get past that sort of not wanting to step on each other's toes, or did you just one day say, we can't get anything done if we don't do this?
I think a looming deadline, the terror of a looming deadline. So what you said as well as that, it's we have a workshop presentation to happen. We need words that are coherent. So we're just going to have to slam something out.
Yeah. And the most recent revision past just after our workshop performances in April, we came with so many takeaways from that after talking to the audience and all of that kind of stuff. We knew exactly what we needed to do, but it was surgery, and it was kind of particular, and it required some bold offers and chopping and reshaping. And so I just kind of went, okay, Christine, I'm just going to go to it. And I made a copy of it and I called it the Franken draft, I think. And I just went to town on it, knowing that the original was preserved. And then we ended up passing that back and forth. And that worked really well because we just made our bold, audacious offers. And that's where a lot of the magic really happened. And then, once we got our characters in on it, then they made the jokes funnier and stuff.
A workshop performance can be a very fraught thing. The audience will tell you one thing in its reactions, and sometimes at the talk back, something completely different, which can confuse things. Years ago, when I started working with Keystone Theater, and we were doing our plays in the style of silent film for a full length show. We did a workshop of our initial thing, and we learned a lot at our workshop, both from the performance, and we also learned a lot from the talk back. But we very carefully controlled the questions that we were asking, and still got a lot of, not a question, just a comment. A lot of those sorts of things that aren't always helpful. Where did you learn the most from your workshop audience? From in performance or from the talk back?
That's an excellent question. I know we were very mindful about the questions we wanted to ask as well. We wanted to really contain the conversation. Christine, did you have thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that I feel like we learned different things. I feel like we learned about what parts of the show dragged and what was working comedically. We could just feel that as performers on stage. But the really valuable information from my perspective, I think we got, is where the audience was confused and where there were holes we needed to fill in for them. And that, I think, was really valuable afterwards. So both were super valuable as far as I'm concerned. Tara?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, there's so much that your audience teaches you just by how they're receiving it in the moment, right? You just, there were moments that hit where that, oh, I didn't know that would be perceived as funny here, or this piece really drags. We need some music here, or I realize we're kind of saying that twice. All those kinds of things where once you've got witness, suddenly you see it in a whole new way.
A lot of the time the work that I'm aware of that you've done is largely on a fringe festival sized stage. This is something bigger. Like, this is now like, I don't even want to say theater scale, because fringe is still theater, but like large scale that you couldn't do at a fringe festival. So this is like I don't know, big time stuff. This is that kind of thing, a little more spectacular than you can fit into fringe. What is it like for you to go into that space, to leave that fringe space and go into this larger space?
Great question.
Do you want to go, Tara?
Sure. I mean, for the majority of my creation career, I have largely started with my work on the fringe circuit, workshopping it and taking it to a professional level, and then, showcasing it and going for presentations and that kind of thing. I've had some experience with getting funding and hiring a team to build our kids shows with Monster Theater, as well as a professional remount of Who Killed Gertrude Crump, which was a murder mystery puppet show I did with Monster many years ago. And so I've had some experience with like a larger stage, larger team, bigger goal. But this is by far and large the most epic and involved and spectacular work of theater I've ever been a part of creating. And it's equal parts terrifying and thrilling. Christine?
Yeah, I would say the big difference is you can think about scale differently. All of a sudden, we're not limited to the 15-minute load in and strike. So we can have bigger effects. We can have hangs that stay there. We can have more than 4 hours of tech time. The ability to create spectacle is just a totally different scale. And as well, we've been really fortunate in that we've had partners along the way, and therefore been able to get funding, knowing that we have partners who are willing to present us. I think that is really critical. I suspect the Shadbolt Center for the Arts in Burnaby, to the city of Burnaby, and then Fringe Theater have offered us both guarantees and full and runs. And that has enabled us to go after funding and be able to hire the team of professionals that we really need to hire, as if we were a seasoned show with our own space, but we're not. It's like a scrappy little indie situation that just happens to have an idea that people have gotten really excited about.
It is incredible when something catches on and people, you can sort of feel excitement. And also you've got some really strong images on the website for the show. Just looking at the images you have, you just immediately say, I want to see what these people have to say. So it's a great place to start. Now you started with these incredible dresses as an idea. The characters themselves evolve in some way. What was the process of finding who each of these sisters was and what made them different from each other?
We did a mask process.
We did.
A full-on Pachinko-esque character mask creation process. So we did this over Zoom during the pandemic. It was one of the first things we did, actually. Because both of us write from the character voice. That's just how we always have been. And through that, we learned a lot about the backstory and the relationship because I think, as you may know, when you start working with another person for the first time, you kind of don't know who's going to be the high status and who's going to be the low status. And a mask very quickly tells you who that's going to be.
Yes. You have been assigned. Yeah.
Did in terms of like figuring out who that was, did you like go? Did you start and it immediately became apparent who was high status, who was low status, or did you have to go back and forth on that? Or sometimes these things just sort of fall into place immediately.
I'd say it fell into place pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. I think we already had a feeling of where it was going to go, but I think that mask process absolutely informed it in with much greater nuance, and sort of it really informed their emotional world, both shared and individual. It was really something to build on, even though it was something so early in the process.
And has the relationship stayed much the same through the early stages into now, or have there been new negotiations between the two?
It's definitely expanded and contracted a little bit. Like for a while, my character was like very sort of disempowered or playing dumb or dumbing down, and they're I wouldn't say matching, but they're definitely sort of a sharing command of the evening a little more than in early iterations. What do you think, Christine? From my perspective,
for sure. Yeah, I would say that's definitely true. Yeah, it's definitely a big sister, little sister dynamic that they have going. And I think that where it evolved to is very much more, I think, reflects it a little more accurately. I don't actually have a sister, but I know a lot of big sister, little sister combos in my life. Tara has several sisters. And it feels very truthful that way.
Yeah, it really does. And something.
And Tara, are you the oldest sister? Or where do you fall in the scale of sisterhood?
In my real life situation, I'm the middle child. I'll make people pay attention to me for a living. It's really shocking.
Now, Tara, I have not had the opportunity to speak to you on the show before. Christine was on just a couple months ago. But one of the questions that I'm always curious about with people is how they got into this thing called theater. So for you, what was your gateway? What's your origin story? How did you get into the theater?
Yeah, well, from a very young age, actually, I was a performer. Before I had even seen a theater show, I was pushing my sisters around. We were putting on plays in the backyard, and it was like very much one of those kinds of stories. We were in love with the Shelley Duvall fairy tale theater series. If you're familiar, we would rent those on beta, and those were like highly theatrical, right? They were like often on these kind of like cheap sets, but with these remarkable world-class performers just having the time of their life, and so we would sort of do our version of that. And but I still didn't quite understand what theater was, and I tried to go into ballet. So I knew, oh yeah, ballerina, that's the thing on stage. And I was the awkward kid in her bathing suit because she forgot her leotard. It wasn't a good scene. And then after a few years of, flapping through that, a head taller than all the other kids, with my messy crooked hair, my mom said, "Oh, I think what you want is theater." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I can't thank her enough for hunting down the Maple Ridge Community Players and getting me into one of their classes, because it just kind of opened up from there. I started doing shows and haven't looked back.
And how did you find your way to the fringe circuit?
Yeah, the fringe. Well, I started volunteering for the fringe when I was in high school, so in the 90s. And I remember thinking, oh, that looks like fun. I'm not afraid to let you know my age, everyone. So I thought that looks like fun. That looks like a cool thing to do. And so once I sort of finished my theater training later on, I'd done a couple of shows here and there, but just, that early career, trying to find your feet thing. I was working in puppetry because that's just sort of a thing that caught on. And there ended up being a collective of us that wanted to create shows. And I said, oh, I know where we can do it. So starting in the early 2000s, had a couple of different collectives, did the Vancouver Fringe for many, many years. And then one year, 2007, the lovely Mr. Ryan Gladstone of Monster Theater approached me after a solo puppet show of mine and said, hey, I just moved to town and I'm looking for someone to make weird theater with. You want to hang out? And we wrote a kids show in 3 days, and I became part of Monster Theater, and then immediately started touring the Fringe circuit with Monster as well. So I think my first significant tour beyond doing my own home Fringe was in 2008. And Fringe has been a huge part of my development as an artist.
Yeah. And Christine, you have been a Fringe performer all across Canada for quite some time. When did you, I think we've talked about it before, but like your first entry into the Fringe world, what was that?
2008 was my first entry into the Fringe at the Edmonton Fringe. Was my very first clown show with my performing partner at the time, Adam Keefe. And we went on, and Adam and I created 3 more clown shows together. I believe that's where we met, actually, because you were doing touring as well.
On Earth, yeah.
You were, yeah. I think we had a mutual appreciation society happening there for a while.
We did indeed. So from there, you've created other shows with other, you've done the science show that you've toured around.
Yeah.
What does Fringe mean to you as a performer, as a touring artist?
Fringe is a place where I can take a real risk. I can take a weird idea, put it on its feet, and if it flops, it's not going to break the bank. And also, audiences are there for the weird idea. You're going to find out pretty quickly whether or not the thing works and whether or not you're going to shelve it or whether it's, this thing has legs. I have, it's been integral to me in my development as a performer. I would say, and I think Tara and I have had this discussion as well, that as women who do not necessarily fit the ingenue type, it's difficult to get cast in things by other people sometimes, especially as you get older. So it literally is why I was able to create work and be on stage and cut my teeth at all, really.
Now, Tara, I would be remiss if I did not have to bring up the 6 of it all, because you on the I became aware of you in 2012 when I was on the Fringe circuit, and saw your show, and when you came to Toronto with it, of your show Till Death, where you played all of the wives of Henry VIII. Which sort of is a story that has become sort of even bigger now, because there's a big musical that sort of started going.
Yes, there is.
As somebody who initially, you were touring this show and sort of like doing the wives of Henry VIII, how has the existence of that musical sort of affected your relationship to that material?
Oh, that's a really great question. Well, actually, I had not seen it until just recently. I was in Edmonton in August, visiting with Christine and doing some in-person key smashing, and she treated me to a performance of 6. So your question is very timely. And we saw it at the Citadel, and it was great. And I feel like I'm just grateful that there's even more amplification of their stories in the world in an accessible way. They do it very differently and sort of with a different spin on the characters. And I have my own relationship to them, and I think the more the merrier. I think it's really excellent to see their stories being told and to see them being empowered and singing some really kick-ass songs along the way. It's a different approach, and it's like a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say that the year that I saw your performance in that show was one of my favorite things I'd seen that year at the Toronto Fringe. So
thank you. That means a lot.
I hope the show is not gone for good. I'm sure that you've performed it enough that maybe you're tired of it, but I personally hope that you do it again sometime.
I'm still physically capable, so I will remount it from time to time, as long as the old body can hack it.
Yeah, for sure. Christine, you have a project that you're currently working on, which is called the Lost Sock Rescue Society.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about that project?
So this is very different from anything else I've ever done. I also have a real interest in immersive and interactive experiences. And last year in 2022, I did an experience design certificate program through Odyssey Works, which is an outfit out of New York and Baltimore area. And this was my final project. So if you go to sockrescue.ca, you too can adopt a lost and recovered sock. I was really inspired by, it sort of follows the animal adoption model, I would say roughly, but it really interrogates our culture of waste and our culture bias against wearing unmatched socks, weirdly. So there's a lot of depth to the whimsy of it all, I would say. And it is going to be happening this March in Edmonton as a part of the Skirts of Fire Festival. The society is going to have a booth up and available for people to come and find mates for their single socks, or just adopt maybe a bonded pair.
I highly recommend the process. Carl has changed our lives.
Yes,
since we adopted him.
Tara adopted Carl last year. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. It's
very silly, but also very profound. I would interview everybody who adopts to make sure the sock is going to be a good fit for their home, because some socks are very fragile and need certain care, And we also do education around proper care of socks and laundrying, because, the laundromat is really the most dangerous place for a sock.
That is a fact. I mean, just laundry in general is a dangerous place for a sock.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. But it's really brilliant. Do check out that work if you can. It's mind blowing. Yeah. Looking at anything you do, Christine, I'm just like, I can't believe I get to work with you. Well, she's a freaking genius.
Anyway, likewise, Ms. Tara Travis.
Nice. Absolutely. Now, one of the things that, you are both, you've done enough fringe festivals that you could be called fringe veterans. And there's always, new people who come onto the fringe circuit. Sometimes they're in their home cities, and sometimes they're launching into their first tour. Do you have opportunity, or have you taken the opportunity in the past to see somebody who's kind of obviously on their first tour and struggling, that maybe needs some advice? Because mentorship, I don't think that there's enough mentorship in fringe. There's certainly not often a structure for it. So have you taken younger artists under your wings in the past? And what was that process like?
That's a great question. I know Christine certainly has an answer for it. And when I was touring regularly, I kind of ended up feeling like mother of hen in a way. That was sort of my role within the community, because it is very much a community, especially with the touring folk, because you bond, moving from town to town together. And so, yeah, it's pretty easy to find the folks who are struggling to find their feet. And, often I think it just sort of became a thing where it's like, oh, go talk to Tara, or go, there are a number of us who have certainly shared anything that we have to offer that might be helpful. I think that's one of the beautiful things about the fringe community, is that there isn't that competition. There isn't that, but if I give you all my trade secrets, then no one will come see my show. It's no, the more we all succeed, the more fringe there is for everyone, the greater it is. So let's help each other out. So, specifically, I feel like it's been a little more casual, like through conversations and that kind of thing, not necessarily one like ongoing mentorship, but it's really exciting to see artists, especially on their first tour, and then just to see their growth and elevation from their first go to their next. How about you, Christine?
Yeah, I love talking to new fringe artists and answering questions. I'd say mostly it's been more informal. I've started to direct fringe shows a little bit more, and I would say as part of that often is a bit of a mentorship process. Like, what is a good fringe poster, which is different from a normal season poster? You know, all of these sorts of things. Like, do I need to get out there and meet people on the ground? Like, yes, you do. You know, all of these sorts of questions. Very recently and very exciting for me is I am also the director of the Play the Fool Festival, which is a festival of clown and physical theater in Edmonton. And as part of that, I have a mentorship program called the Rookie Cabaret. So a handful of artists will work with me over a series of weeks to create. Often it's their first turn, or maybe they're experimenting with a new form, or, you know, whatever. But there's somebody who needs a little bit more support to create a piece. And the show's always killer. Honestly, it always slays at the festival. And this year they've decided to get together and actually apply and try to do that show as a fringe show for next year in Edmonton. And I'm very excited. I'm really hoping they get in which case I will continue to mentor them through that. Because the directorial piece of it's fallen back a little bit because the show's been built. But you know, there's all the little intricacies of, again, what does a good poster look like? What should my tech form look like? Do I need a stage manager? Is this too complicated for sound? Like, lots of these little things that it's really helpful to have a veteran, as you say, weigh in on and help with.
Yeah, absolutely. Tara, you mentioned the competition aspect, and I think I've noticed just generally that I tend to see people see fringe and audience and that sort of thing as a competition when they are younger, when it's sort of like they're early in their career. That sort of goes by the wayside really quickly if you do a fringe tour, because suddenly you see you're up now, I'm down, I'm up, you're down. Like, it's all like, it's the community sort of like needs it. You need each other to survive, which is an amazing thing to see somebody have that click for somebody and they realize, oh wait, no, it is true. There is audience enough for everyone.
Absolutely, there is. And and lifting each other up it only makes things, it makes things better for everyone, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Tara, I have it on good authority that you were in a film with Priyanka, the drag queen.
Yes. Yes, I was.
Tell me about that. What's that film?
Oh my gosh. It's so fun. It actually just came out finally on Out TV specifically. I know they were looking at possibly other distributors for the future, but at the moment it's on Out TV, and it's very much sort of the script is very much a love letter to the like the Hallmark or Lifetime movie format, but the lead just happens to be played by a drag artist, you know, and the world very much reflects that. But it, like, being in Vancouver where a lot of Hallmark, you know, is shot, I've auditioned for the generic version of this, you know, if you will, and it's just like amped up. It's just ridiculous and a good time. And I had the pleasure of sharing the screen with her. I played her stepmother, Barbara, and it was a very, very fun role. It was one of those that she just came off the page. She was just this drunken narcissist, and I just really enjoy playing like harsh, judgmental, self-involved people, because it's a very different exploration, you know, compared to my usual way of navigating the world, at least I hope.
Why is it that the worst people are the most fun to play?
Oh yeah, I know. I love playing jerks. I think it's really fun. Yeah, I think that's something that we're having fun with in this show too. Like, when we can get a little nasty, it's like, whoa, that's kind of fun.
Now, Christine, from a clown background, how does clown inform the spinsters?
Oh, I mean, I would say they're kind of pure clown. They're more in the world of neo-bouffant, I would say. which is they have more experience, they're more knowing, they're more arch, they're very arch, they're very actually drag inspired. Actually, these characters is what we put on our grant application forms, and the aesthetic is very much drag inspired as well. It's all extremely heightened. So it comes from there. But I would say more than anything, it's in the spirit of play. As Tara and I have been running lines already, even though we're just in the process of getting off book, we're having to reel ourselves back in. It's like, okay, no improv yet. No improv yet. We need to know the lines we wrote first before we go off track. But it's really hard because we both have these really strong impulses to play constantly. And I think that's what's going to be extremely magical for us, especially as a duo, because we have so much fun playing with each other.
Yeah, I think that's obvious. Just watching the way that you interact and just hear. In terms of the improv aspect, how far do you feel like you can go with this? Like, how do you? First off, I mean, you can start into improv. How do you bring yourself back to the script as it's supposed to be once you start to deviate? How do you just like use each other as a lifeline? How does that work?
That's a really good question. I feel like the way that we've set it up, hopefully we've got sort of areas where there's forgiveness with a bit of play and looseness. And then there are times where it's a tight ship that must sail. So I think we've built it in knowing that it was going to happen, knowing it was going to expand, knowing it was going to get a little loose and off the rails once in a while, but with clear reentry points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, is knowing the script well enough that you've got the clear re-entry point. And in any clown show I've ever done, if something happens, you have to deal with the thing. So you just need to know the script well enough so that when it's time to get back on the ship, you can write it. You can find that point. But as Tara said, we tried to predict where those spots are most likely to be and give ourselves a couple of strategies to get back on track.
Yeah. And the other advantage to Fringe is that you're not, like, if you go over by a couple of minutes, nobody's going to turn the lights out on you.
Oh, yeah. This is so great to not have to be worried about running 1 minute long. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's it's a gift, because we don't actually really know how long the show's going to run. We think it's going to be 70, maybe 75, or really, we'll find. We're going to find out in about 3 weeks.
Yes, we will. Oh, golly. She keeps expanding. She keeps expanding. There's just so much fun to be found.
Well, as it is with any clown show, right? Like, you start off with a 50-minute show. I will tell people who are building their first clown show, build it for like 45 to 48. And by the end of the run, you'll probably be at 55 if you're really clowning. So, we honestly don't know. But a lot of it is extremely tight and choreographed. It's actually an extremely technical show with the puppetry elements and some of the movement elements as well. So I would say it's also probably the most technically challenging show I've ever been co-creator of as well, or maybe even done at all, frankly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like, physically and actually with our design team and all of the different elements that all departments must speak to each other, because everything and every piece informs every other piece. Like, it has to be a collective creation. It's pretty epic visually and experientially.
I can't wait to hear how it goes, to be honest with you. I can't wait to, and I hope you managed to tour with it so that I could see it out here in Toronto.
Well, we've applied to SummerWorks, so call your SummerWorks friends.
Please.
I don't have any influence on those sorts of things, but I'll sort of like send something off into the SummerWorks gods, so that they can do something so we can see this. Christine, Tara, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited about this show.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And I think I forgot to say that movie is called It's All Sunshine and Rainbows, the movie with Priyanka.
Yes, thank you.
And also, she was a treat to work with. She's a rough pro.
This has been an episode of Stageworthy. Stageworthy is produced, hosted, and edited by Phil Rickaby.
That's me. If you enjoyed this podcast and you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can leave a 5-star rating. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave a review. Those reviews and ratings help new people find the show. If you want to keep up with what's going on with Stageworthy and my other projects, you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to philrickaby.com/subscribe. And remember, if you want to leave a tip, you'll find a link to the virtual tip jar in the show notes or on the website. You can find Stageworthy on Twitter and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website with the complete archive of all episodes at stageworthy.ca. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at philrickaby, and as I mentioned, my website is philrickaby.com. See you next week for another episode of Stageworthy.